Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Canadian Shield. My name is Sterling, and I'm your host. We have been hearing from the innovation minister for months and months and months how he's going to have this grocery code of conduct, and it's going to make every Canadian's lives better. It's going to make the Canadians put MP Champagne on their shoulders and carry him around the city like a conquering hero, like he's, Emperor Nero or something. And it turns out that it means absolutely nothing. That is just a worthless expenditure of money, because they just, rather than make this, they are a body of lawyers, right? Most of the House of Commons is lawyers. Yet still they had to hire somebody else to be the main office for this code of conduct. So they're just giving taxpayers dollars to these people and an office, and Lord knows what other expenditures are covered. So these guys could sit around and talk, really. It's empty, right? It's like your stomach. It's empty. You know what I mean? Anyway, before I get into it, I would encourage you to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share this channel with your friends. I have memberships, and I also have a link for a GoFundMe. All right, let's check it out.
Start today with the cost of groceries, which remains a top concern as an affordability crisis keeps Canadians in its grips. After months of pushback, Loblaw says it's ready to sign the Grocery Code of Conduct, or the Grocer Code of Conduct, describing a revised version of it as now, quote, fair. The Code of Conduct aims to provide guidelines for fair dealings between grocery retailers and their suppliers, but it's only voluntary, and not all of the 5 major grocers have signed on. It's also one of the measures the feds pledged to accelerate back in the fall as a way to help stabilize the cost of groceries. The move from Loblaw comes as some Canadians are boycotting all Loblaw-owned stores in response to high food prices, but the company says its announcement has nothing to do with those demands. So once in place, will a code of conduct really impact your grocery bill, and is more foreign competition on the way? Industry Minister Vassy Kapelos is with us now to answer those questions. Minister, great pleasure to see you as always. Thank you for making the time. The news from Loblaw comes at the same time as we know that Walmart is still holding out. And Loblaw predicated its signing on to the Grocer Code of Conduct on all its competitors doing the same. Are you involved in any discussions to try and compel Walmart to sign on?
No, we've put pressure on Loblaws for months now, and we were very clear with them that whether they would sign on to the Code of Conduct voluntarily, otherwise there'd be legislation. And we're going to put the pressure, and I call on them now. I mean, we're together. We've been reaching out to Walmart. I'm reaching out to Costco to say, listen, this is not a matter of choice. Consumers, Canadians, expect you to sign on the Code of Conduct, and we want you to do that very quickly.
You referenced just now the possibility of legislation, and I did want to ask you about that when you talk about applying pressure and what exactly that would mean, because the House committee that was looking into this did make a recommendation that there be essentially a law that would make it mandatory to compel these grocers to sign on. Is that a recommendation that you have formally accepted? Like, if they don't sign on, are you prepared to introduce legislation that would make it mandatory?
And they understand, as I said to Loblaws, and I'm saying it to you very publicly, Canadians expect them to do so, and they expect them to do so very quickly.
Respectfully, though, when you talk about that action coming quickly, it has not. This Grocer Code of Conduct has been in the works for years. You announced, as we referenced in the introduction, Minister, that you would attempt to accelerate it through that pressure back in the fall. It's been more than 8 months since that happened. Now one grocer has decided to change its mind. How can you be sure? You said the other 2 will sign on. My question, though, to you was whether or not, if they don't, you are prepared to make it mandatory through legislation. Can you answer that question specifically? But I think for many consumers and Canadians who are watching right now, I mean, they are struggling under the weight of how much those grocery prices have gone up, right? And it's against that backdrop that I'm asking the question, because what I interpret from your last 2 answers is that you are not willing to introduce legislation to compel them should those other 2 grocers not do what you expect them to do.
So you've heard that. So she asked him 2 times. He said that he told them that these Walmart and Costco, if they didn't get on board, they might be forced to introduce legislation. Now, just before I go any further, I would like you to understand that this Grocery Code of Conduct is basically just a bunch of words saying everybody has to get along. And if you have deals with each other, well, you have to do it nicely and fairly. Because the idea somehow is that the supply chain is being bullied, right? That the supply chain is somehow being exclusive. which makes very little sense to me because there's very few products that you can get in one store that you can't get in another store unless it's something behind the counter like, a certain kind of fish or, something kept fresh. But for the most part, if it's on the shelf, that's all about the supplier. And then you have, like in the case of Loblaws, they have, President's Choice, and then Metro has Merit Selection. And so they have their own individual brands, but they don't own the manufacturing. So really what it boils down to is who gets what fresh fruit. Now, if you are like me, you care only that your fruit's not bruised. You don't really care what it looks like. It just doesn't, it doesn't have to be in the perfect shape. It just has to not have bruises in it. That's my thing, because bruises impact the flavor. And I think that what this grocery code of conduct does is make everybody play nice with the suppliers, which is just ridiculous. Like I read it and I read through, I don't know, almost all of it. I got fed up. Like it's so toothless. Like I said at the beginning, it's just like your stomach, right? Empty and hollow. It means nothing. And this guy has stood up in the House of Commons 25, 50 times in the last 8 months and said, oh no, we're working on the code of conduct and the Conservatives need to do better and la 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 la. And then the Jagmeet Singh echoing from the corner, oh, well, corporate greed and blah, 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 blah. Now he wants to say that somehow this is going to have this major impact on everybody, but he wouldn't say it. He wouldn't commit to it. And of course, he can't get legislation. He never drafted any legislation. They're coming up to the summer break in a couple of weeks. So in the next time you hear about this, a year will have gone by and nothing has changed. Nothing. And if you really want to know what's going to be changed, just listen to how he finishes out the segment.
Like you said, this is just one of the many things we've been trying to do. We still need to tackle food price stability. This is one item. It's going to provide fairness and more transparency. I can tell you there were a number of practices in the industry that I've learned when we engaged with independent grocers that were concerning. That code of conduct is going to help. It's a step in the right direction. It's not. That's not going to lead necessarily to lower prices in the short term.
So it's not going to lead to lower prices for groceries. Why do I care what you're talking about? Why do I care if they all get together and do kumbaya? Why do any of us care? We want cheaper food. We don't want everybody to be holding each other's hands. It's business. You're not going to convince me that somehow they're all going to start to get along. The last thing I want them to do is all get along. I want them all competing for competition. And we already have laws in this country against that kind of stuff, where the price fixing, where they decide that they're all going to just charge the same amount of money for a loaf of bread. Galen Weston is paid a big, huge fine for that. But the Liberals are just so completely out of touch. They just think that if they say fancy words and flowery words, that somehow it's going to make you feel like you're not hungry. Somehow it's going to make you feel like your money is going farther. Today, they tried to talk about the inflation is down from April till May, 2 points, or not 2 points, excuse me, 0.2 points. And they're making this big deal like somehow it's important, and it's really not. And when you look at, like, I'm doing a thing on it, but when you look at the overall from 2020 to today, groceries are still up 22%. So they got nothing in this legislation. And just as I wrap here, I'd like to point out that Walmart and Costco sell much more than groceries. Yeah, you can argue that Loblaws has Shoppers Drug Mart, and perhaps they sell more than groceries as well. But Loblaws, when you go into a Walmart store, when you go into a Costco store, you don't see just groceries. You see many, many, many items ranging from televisions through to, alcohol, all kinds of stuff. And the idea that somehow they're going to limit themselves and limit their business practices to some grocery code of conduct, which in the end means absolutely nothing. It's not mandatory, right? It means nothing. It's just it's a waste of taxpayer dollars is all it really is. All right, I'm going to wrap here. I want to thank you all for listening. I would appreciate it if you would like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share this channel with your friends. I'll talk to you next time.